Hi, I'm here to talk about WorkWise's approach to hosting. And it's going to sound a little bit like a sales pitch from WorkWise, but I think you have to understand what our software is about and what our customers are like in order to really understand how we got to where we are with hosting. So we're going to go down that route. I do have knowledge of Amazon, Google, and Azure, and I am responsible, my team is responsible for managing ERP and CRM that's hosted in the cloud for WorkWise. We've been hosting for about 8 years in Amazon, and that's our CRM product. The CRM product was an acquisition that WorkWise made about 5 years ago. And at that time, we almost doubled the size of our Milwaukee office by acquiring OnContact CRM. The CRM product is very different from the ERP product. The CRM product is a SPA application, as was talked about previously, written in ASP.NET Core 2.0, and is quite modern and up to date. It's not written in Synergy though, it's written in C#. ERP is a little different. ERP is a hybrid solution. It is based on SQL. We converted it to SQL in 2006 when I rejoined WorkWise. And its core is still Synergy. But we do have a C# interface that's written around it in order to provide, starting in 2008, a more modern looking interface to what was toolkitted before. Since then, some extensions have been made to the toolkitted pieces of Synergy, and it looks quite similar to the rest of it. And that was with help from professional services and other folks. Our headquarters are in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. We've got about 110 employees. I told you about the 2 flagship products. We were established in 2001, but we actually come from our roots are in effective management systems, which was established back in '77. If you know the MCBA package, it's us, okay? We sold it to MCBA, so it goes back quite a ways. So one of the unique things about WorkWise is that we market our software both as on-premise and also hosted. And the OnContact CRM, we do on-premise and SaaS cloud hosting as well as private cloud hosted. And WorkWise ERP, we do on-premise and private cloud hosted. And the more I'll tell you about later. We're going to focus really only on private cloud hosted ERP, because otherwise we'll be here for the entire day to talk about the rest of it. When we inherited OnContact and merged them into WorkWise, they were already in Amazon. So it was a natural extension for us to try and figure out what we could do in Amazon. And when we started, we felt that, we're doing this great thing with CRM, and it's a great business. The majority of that is SaaS-based and is in the cloud. And this is like 5 years ago. And our CEO said, we really need to have a cloud-based offering for ERP. Carl, see what you can do. So I wasn't about to disturb what R&D was doing with developing new features in the product. We weren't going to do something that was specifically targeted at the cloud. Instead, I had to figure out a way to get it in the cloud. And that's basically what we did. Now, you need to know a little bit about our customers. The industries that we serve with our ERP product are really quite varied. Agricultural, electronics, metal fabrication, food and beverage, industrial equipment, even industrial vehicles and medical equipment. It's like fire trucks, Bradley armored vehicles, things like that. The interesting thing is that the customers are demanding now cloud hosting as well as on-premise, and that's a big shift. We have some very unique services and features that we offer in the cloud, but another important thing that we've come to learn is that the cloud is also a revenue generator for us. At first it was a thing so that we could have something to market for ERP, but now it's actually become a fourth revenue stream for us, and a fairly significant one too. When I say a fourth revenue stream, I'm talking about, you license your software, you provide support, annual support contracts, You add professional services for the implementation of the software, and now we have a hosting revenue stream too. The majority of the, well, not the majority, half of our company probably couldn't program their way out of a paper bag. They're manufacturing consultants, and they know manufacturing inside and out. So this product is very complex. It literally has thousands of man-years of development put into it, and it's pricey too. So customers go through quite a long selection process when they buy WorkWise. So our customers, as I showed you in the slide before, create highly engineered products, whether they're doing metal fabrication, whatever. A customer is typically anywhere from 10 seats of ERP to 250 or more seats. We just sold a 250-seat deal at the beginning of this year. A customer could have one physical location or many physical locations, and that could equate not only to their operations, but also to where inventory is stored. You might have raw materials at this location, but this location stocks the sub-assemblies that are manufactured from those raw materials, and it's the same, same part number. It's not stocked here, but it's stocked over there. So it gets quite complicated. So our manufacturing consultants are always engaged with that. We also sell 17 different integrated third-party applications. We can't do it all. It's a very complex package to begin with, but we'll sell quality assurance packages on top of it. We'll sell a number of different types of packages to complement what we have. And they typically interface through the back end through SQL. But the typical ERP customer says, don't change my software. And that's why you didn't see ERP listed as a SaaS product. Because what happens in a SaaS type environment? You always get the latest version of the software. Well, that's hell to an ERP customer. They don't want that. Because an ERP installation takes a long time to implement. It could take 18 months to 2 years to implement after they buy. And then at that point, they want to run with that as long as they can. The mentality of most manufacturing folks is, the best machine I have is that 40-year-old drill press that still has the tolerances from 40 years ago, and it's fully depreciated. So that's the mentality. They want to run it as long as possible. And you don't want to change your processes around that, which new software would do, because it just creates chaos in the shop. So a typical on-premise solution has a domain controller, because our software requires Active Directory, and that's typically already there. And then we have an application server, which can be small or quite large, a SQL server, and typically a terminal server associated with it. So it's actually a fairly simple installation from an IT perspective, and as a result, it makes it easy to move something like that to the cloud. So the customers are looking at security, stability. That means a private cloud, no SaaS. So each WorkWise customer gets their own VPC, or virtual private cloud, and that's the way we host ERP. Most of you know this, but the three major vendors that we talk about, Amazon Web Services, Google, and Microsoft Azure, are all what they call hyper-converged environments. So when you go to actually host something on a server, you're not really picking a physical server, you're assembling pieces together. The number of CPUs, the amount of RAM, and it goes out and aggregates this stuff and virtually creates the machine. It's a very different type of environment. The old private cloud concept was something like something similar to what Rackspace was doing a while back in conjunction with Hewlett-Packard, and I worked for a long time with Hewlett-Packard, and that's really more of a way to sell hardware. Their private clouds meant that, let's say that you wanted to start a private cloud, you would buy the hardware, it would be put into a data center, and then you would provision it and use it the way you want. That's not the way any of these services work. This stuff coalesces out of a huge conglomeration of hardware when you configure it with your mouse clicks on the screen. WorkWise is agnostic from a vendor perspective. You don't want to dilute yourself. There's a lot of great things that you can do with these different cloud vendors because they all offer very different services. You don't want to code yourself into a corner with these. You want to choose a vendor that fits all your basic needs when you're going into this, and that's what WorkWise did. We wanted something that was fundamentally transferable between all three major vendors. We chose Amazon Web Services because we were already in Amazon Web Services when we purchased OnContact. We could have chosen anybody and been successful with this. AWS has been and still is the largest hosting provider that there is. If you look at the major hosting providers, Amazon, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, IBM Cloud, and Alibaba, Amazon is bigger than all of those combined. Okay? You think Azure's big and you think Google's big. Amazon is actually bigger. It's kind of scary how big they are. And that doesn't mean that the other ones are less. It just means that Amazon was there first and they acquired the bulk of the customers and they're keeping the engine rolling. There's the widest variety of out-of-the-box practical services on Amazon as well. And these services we use to complement the core environment that we've decided to host. That core environment is the thing that's portable between different vendors, the agnostic portion. How you monitor and how you launch these things, those are other services that you can buy from the different vendors. You may want to put alarms in to check for, CPU consumption, memory consumption. You may want to check disk I/O. There's all different kinds of things that you can do from the exterior of your cloud in order to monitor for it and proactively do things. It can actually make changes on the fly on your behalf, or it can alarm you and tell you, hey, this is going on, you need to do something. There's a huge variety of services for that in Amazon. The data resiliency in Amazon is crazy good, and Google's about the same too, as is Azure. But Amazon has got 9 nines of data resiliency, which is crazy, when you think about it. And also Amazon leads in price reductions, 48 consecutive price reductions since they started. And fortunately, in this environment, that's okay too if you choose a different vendor because they all follow suit and follow the same price reductions. It just takes them a couple weeks to catch up. So we are cloud agnostic. But the Google Cloud Platform in the last 2 years has ramped up, and we're using it at WorkWise. Just this past week, we transparently moved a live customer to Google from Amazon. And I mean transparently. They didn't know it. Now, we own part of this company, so we had the opportunity to do that. But we moved them over in a replicated fashion with the tools that were provided from Google from Amazon. And once it was fully replicated, we swapped GoDaddy's IP address to point over to Google. So when they typed in the right thing to get to their gateway, when they woke up in the morning, they were in Google and had no clue. So it's really fascinating how you can move between clouds to on-premise. You can take something, if you do this agnostic approach, you can even pull something from the cloud back on-premise too. And we advertise that with our customers as well. Microsoft Azure is next on the list for us. We're just getting our feet wet in Google and learning the pieces of Google. I think it's important for anybody who does hosting to keep abreast of the different things that are going on in the industry. And each one of these vendors has their own unique edge when it comes to hosting. Everybody's got a slightly different slant on it. And it really is cool to go and look at these and experiment with some of these, because you can come up with some scenarios where one provider may be better than another for a particular type of customer. So it's important to stay abreast of that. So we talked about Amazon, big, long track record, huge customer base. People like Netflix host in Amazon. When you're watching Netflix at night, that's all coming from Amazon. If you use the Apple iCloud, that's in Amazon. If you use iTunes, well, that straddles Amazon and Google. It's kind of interesting how all this stuff just is out there in the cloud. The Google Cloud Platform is still young. It's been about 2 years to mature, and it's still adding services, but gosh, they have a great interface. It is really slick. It is simple, simple, simple. The interface, the dashboards, how you manage things, the customizations that you can do. In some respects, there's a lot of parallels to Azure, the way that they've put it together, but I think the Google one's a little bit slicker. They have fantastic network throughput. 40% of all the internet traffic in the world goes through Google networks. 40%. So their ability to transfer something from coast to coast or from continent to continent, it's amazing how fast this stuff moves. It's incredible. Their support is excellent. For the web, you can put calls in over the web. You get a response within 30 minutes. Phone in is almost immediate. And on-premise, I actually have people coming to my office to give support and free training. So they're really eager to get out there and get the business. So if you're new to hosting, Google would be a pretty attractive one to do. Azure, I don't have that much experience with it. They are Microsoft-centric, and as I say, that can be a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But they're all good, and they all do the job. They just do it a little bit differently. So WorkWise was not hosting ERP. We were trying to get into it. And the first thing we did is, let's draft a service level agreement that's something that we can live with and manage, that is price competitive, and has features that aren't practical on-premise. And that's really how we got to the point of creating this common denominator of an agnostic cloud that could move between vendors. When you get into this, though, you're becoming a hosting provider. And there's a lot of fundamental things that you have to do that you don't think of when you're just a software company. Because when you're selling your software to be installed on-premise, you're not thinking of virus, malware. You're not thinking of how we're going to store the backups. You're telling them you need to back up your system. But now, as a hosting provider, you're responsible for everything from soup to nuts. We don't give our customers system admin access to any of the servers. So we take care of everything. We encrypt everything. All the data is encrypted at rest, and that's a very common thing between all three of these vendors. We also encrypt in transit. You just have to do that these days. Customers want reliability, and I try to use prepackaged services as much as possible. There is a relational database service from Amazon, and Azure has this too, and so does Google. They're all a little bit different. In the case of Amazon, it is standard Microsoft SQL Server, which is what we use. I didn't want to convert to MySQL or something like that, or the proprietary one that Amazon has. But they've got all these RDS instances that are available, and they're great because they are 24/7. They never go down. It's a regular SQL server, and the backups are automatic. I don't have to worry. All I have to do is click and say, I want that RDS. Okay, let's put the database out there. I can forget about it. Now they're taking care of the backup. The same thing goes for Active Directory. I can create a domain server and put it out there like I would in the past, and I do that still for small customers, like 10 seats or something. I'll create a small instance and put Active Directory on it. But anything over 10 seats, I'm buying Amazon's Active Directory service, because it's already got itself planted in multiple availability zones. And I can use that to my advantage. I don't have to worry about maintaining that server anymore. It's a service instead. So use as many services as you can in order to get yourself out of the labor of maintaining that. And obviously you want to leverage the vendors' white papers and blogs. Amazon and Google are really hard to beat with this. I don't know about you, but when I go through Microsoft documentation, I have to read 5 or 6 articles that are authored before I can figure out what the heck is going on with it. Whereas Amazon and Google give you nice structured tutorials. There is a big difference in the way the documentation is put together. There's also the marketplace, and all three vendors do have a marketplace where third parties come in and offer their services. Amazon has a creative way of integrating the technology and the pricing. For example, and I told you about RDS, there's other things you can buy too. If you find something in the marketplace from an Amazon partner and they're selling this, when you purchase the service, it just gets added on to your hourly rate in Amazon. You don't have to buy independently from them. It gets added on. So it's really a nice way, and it falls out in your bill very clearly. Also, we use a third-party vendor to do our billing through Amazon, and we just switched that 2 months ago. There's a great program called Cloud Checker, and Cloud Checker monitors your spend in Google or Amazon or Azure. There is a partner of Cloud Checker and Amazon that says, well, if you buy your Amazon bill if you funnel your Amazon bill through us, we'll give you Cloud Checker for free. Well, that's like $700 or $800 that I don't have to pay every year. I get Cloud Checker, and they're going to give me free training on how to use Cloud Checker and refine it, and how to reduce my Amazon bill. And how do they fund that? Through a 2% discount that they get from Amazon in order to do that sale. So that they're making it up in bulk sales. And I come out winning, they win, and Amazon wins because I'll buy more from them. To get started, we can extend the local domain to the cloud. We've done that at WorkWise, and we've done that for 2 other customers. It's actually relatively easy to do. And the nice thing about that is that printers, the servers, everything look like they're right in your local domain. Users have no clue what's going on, what server they're going to. They don't know where it is. My server room 5 years ago when you compare 5 years ago to today, my server room is 20% of what it was 5 years ago. I'm just eliminating things left and right and hosting them. And I'm actually saving money in doing that too. We move a lot of current workloads to the cloud. This big ERP deal that I talked about, they were so pumped up from our conversation and from talking to other hosted customers, they said, well, we have a bunch of other servers that we need to preserve that have some legacy software on them. Can you host those for us too? Sure, we'll do that. So now we're hosting in a separate VPC all their current servers, and we've extended their domain into that VPC. So, it's a great revenue stream for us. Now the burden of system management is off of that customer. It's a fairly significant site with thousands of employees. We're their IT department now managing that. And the people that they have for IT are now help desk type people helping the end users. They don't need to have SQL administrators. They don't need to have system administrators. They don't have to worry about patching. We take care of it for them. So the cloud can save you money. When I say you, I do mean you guys, okay? Not the customer of WorkWise, but we're going to turn this around in just a minute. We've got the security, the flexibility, the disaster recovery, business continuity, backups. You reduce the IT staff turnover. You have freedom to move between vendors. And there's a real shift in mentality. If you've got your own servers on-prem, and think about this, the server goes nuts on you, what do? You spend a half a day or a full day trying to figure out what the heck is going on with that server. Well, you know what you do in these environments? Delete. You just throw it away and launch another copy of it with an image that you have. And you already got backup, so you can restore that. You can get this thing back and up and running in 15 minutes. Why spend a day fixing something when you can throw it away and just launch a new one? And that's the mentality you get into with these. So let's shift the perspective. It's a very similar list, but now let's look at it from a WorkWise customer perspective. Like I said, the customer can save money by doing this too because of the labor components and the risks involved to their business. Think about disaster recovery and business continuity. My backups are replicated worldwide in Google and Amazon and Azure. So I can get my backups back even if a meteor falls on the darn data center. I can just launch it again in a different data center. So you've still got the freedom to move. We advertise that, if you don't like Amazon, well, we can put you in Google. Oh, wait a minute, you want to go back on-prem? We can move you back on-prem. We could take an older version of our software that's on-prem and move it to the cloud too. I mean, we can do just about anything you want because the tools are there to allow us to do that. The other nice thing too is that you have seasonal flexibility. Because these servers can be scaled up and down in size, we can adjust it, and the spend changes for you as a customer as well. Because you may have summer seasons are slow, winter seasons are high. Your spend can drift back and forth based on the demand that you have for your business. We can scale the system up or down. So WorkWise provides both, and it makes us very unique in the ERP business. Most ERP systems that are sold from manufacturers are geared now towards SaaS and being in the cloud. And as I said, the typical ERP customer, SaaS is a bad thing for them. So they love the fact that they get private clouds, okay? That's really important. We can extend their network to the cloud transparently. Your IT staff, the skills change there. It's more of a help desk. And if you're acquiring another company, well, it's easy. We can just add them on into the cloud. You need another facility across town. We can treat it like an acquisition, a simple internet connection. Boom, you're in. And like the other servers that I talked about that we moved, it's not a problem. We do this all day long. So the care and feeding is all under an umbrella agreement with us. Security. And again, this is from a customer perspective, a WorkWise customer perspective. Banks use the cloud. The US government uses the cloud. Amazon and Azure actually have specific US government clouds. You're worried about ITAR, the employees, you have to have US or green card type employees managing things. You can do that with Azure and Amazon. The new GDPR regulations that really you can further cement the security of your installation by really tightening down the security as to who can access it and from where. HIPAA compliance, hackers coming in. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do in order to restrict the access and really clamp it down. I already talked about the seasonal needs. The cloud is monitored 100% of the time. Support. We have full business support from Amazon and from Google now as well. And they're behind our own staff that we have who regularly go to training for both Google and Amazon. I've got the staff divided, but they also overlap on this. And if you're moving elements of manufacturing, as a WorkWise customer again, offshore, it's not a problem. All of these services have facilities on all the continents, with the exception of Antarctica. But we even experimented with this. As we were talking to a customer, an ERP prospect, this happened about 18 months ago. We had an hour-long call that we were on, and they said, well, we're going to do some manufacturing in China. We're worried about the latency, et cetera. I'm talking to my guy in China right now. It's not working that great. So I spun up a client that came off of a US-based app server. I put a terminal server over in Malaysia. And I said, here's an IP address. Have your guy go on remote desktop to that and tell me how it is. He says, wow, this is working great. Okay, well, I guess we can solve that for you. You can have your cake and eat it too. Your US company can have access just as fast as the other company. Plus, if you're doing things that are outside of the US and you have very sensitive information, we can put in different types of interfaces for the end user, one of which I'll show you in a minute. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do. You move the connection as close as possible to the end user, and you take advantage of the speed that are in all of these vendors' backbones. As I said, these vendors have regions and then they subdivide. Amazon calls them regions and availability zones. And when we create a network, it's always in at least 2 availability zones. And those zones are physically separated by a minimum of about 50 miles. Sometimes they're as much as 200 miles apart within the region. And some of the regions have like 7 or 8 availability zones scattered around. And the backups, though, all the backups are all global storage. So regardless of what happens in a region, your backup is still accessible in other places around the world and within the US. We talked about all of this, the cloud metrics, the ability to fix hardware on the fly. That's an interesting thing too. Amazon will slide servers out on us when they detect problems. The durability of data, we talked about the 9 nines, the sophisticated isolation that we can do, and the international users who have cross-country or overseas plans. This is all important for our customer base and great selling points. We know the software, we know AWS, we're getting to really know Google. It's really all we do in the WorkWise IT department. Actually, all my staff works on the cloud. I have half of a person that's doing our own help desk, internal help desk, and most everybody is focused on the cloud. So you have the freedom to move, and we are agnostic. Customers can move existing systems, they can upgrade from on-premise to a newer version in the cloud, or they can do re-implementations in the cloud, and they can do it side by side. We can run all this stuff side by side where they couldn't do that before, because when we're done with one, we can just delete the hardware, because there is no hardware. It's a hyper-converged environment. So it's easy to quote, too. Doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition. When I came on board in 2006, one of the first things we did is we went with BPOS, which was the forerunner of Office 365. That was one of the best things I ever did. Who wants to administer an Exchange server? You do it once and you're going to know this now, for years. I mean, it's ridiculous. Get rid of the Exchange server. So I hosted it in Office 365. One of the best decisions ever. OnContact CRM can be in the cloud and ERP can be on-premise, or vice versa, or everything in the cloud. And all the third-party apps, those can reside either way too. But we always ask the question, why not move it all to the cloud? And most customers want to do that. They want to get the headache out, they want to get the IT room out, they want to get the responsibility out and shift it to somebody else. So are there any questions?
What would you say your % of time/money saved by moving your resources to the cloud?
Gosh, I mean, we're focused on doing new business. When my IT staff is focused on new business, because once we establish somebody, then they're automatically monitored. All we have to do is review reports that come out, okay? And we have to plan a few things. So yeah, it's a big labor reduction. Now my labor is focused on new business and new revenue opportunities.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by cloud agnostic? What were some of the pitfalls you were trying to avoid?
Well, I didn't want to get into a situation where I started creating a cloud architecture that was based, predominantly on services that are unique to a cloud provider. Now, we did that with CRM, because CRM was started like 8 years ago in Amazon. And we use the Elastic Load Balancer, we use a bunch of different things in order to expand and contract that. There's a lot of engineering in the cloud that went on. I wanted to keep ERP simple. And keeping it simple and fundamental allows me to put that anywhere. I even set up an ERP system in Alibaba in China. What a waste of time that was. But I wanted to do it to see if I could, and I did. But it really is portable to just about anywhere.
And lastly, how do your customers deal with areas that have poor connectivity?
Well, because we have the ability to host in any region, there are multiple regions in the US. We've got North Virginia, Ohio, we've got Oregon, California. There's a number of different places to go. Most of our customers, ERP customers, the vast majority of them are in what's called the Rust Belt. And the Rust Belt is Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, down through Illinois, and then up through the Northeast, okay? So that whole area is very well covered by Amazon. It's also well covered by the other two vendors too. But customers who don't have good connectivity or marginal connectivity, what I always suggest to them is, look, you're making these cost savings doing all of this. Put in redundant internet into your facility, okay? And when you do that, do it from two different ISPs, so it's coming in from different directions, because those can always be balanced out of a router, and you can use both of them at the same time. And if one fails, well, you always got the other one as backup. We have never, and because we use terminal services, the overhead is very low on the application being accessed remotely. So even people who only have like 20 megabit up and down, they're doing great, no problem.
Do your SLA require that your customers have multiple ways to get on the internet?
No, we don't require it, but of course they have to have at least one. We don't require it, but there are, I think there's really only one customer that's done that.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome. Thank you.